All right, we're live.
All right, Otago family, we are back. We are going to talk about is are we banning institutional investors from buying homes? What does this mean? Is this a good idea, a bad idea? Um, so Peter, what is actually happening here? Are big companies just not allowed to buy any single family homes? What does this really mean?
Yeah, so recently there was a bill that just got passed. I think at the House as well, but it's called the 21st Century Road to Housing Act. I think the whole point of this act is to make housing affordable again, especially for the average homeowners. Right? It has been a problem for a long time, so they're doing all types of things to make homeownership affordable. One of the things that they are trying to do is to I don't know if ban is necessarily the best word for this, but they are trying to curb and make it difficult for institutional investors from buying single family homes. So we're not talking about multifamilies like duplexes, fourplexes, and apartment buildings. We're just talking about single family homes, which are reserved for family. I mean, it's supposed to be for families, not necessarily for larger institutional investors. So the Senate, I believe, passed it in like February or March, and then the House also, with a softened version, passed it recently. And so, yeah, yeah, this is all an effort, a concerted effort to fix a very large problem. I've actually done a video on this about, and this is before this was even. I mean, this was like a few years ago, and I said that we should actually ban institutional investors from buying single family homes. Like they could buy everything else, but not single family homes because that constrained supply is making homes totally unaffordable. So that's basically what's going on.
So I personally have some experience with this where there's a lot of these companies who buy homes with LLCs that actually are owned by bigger companies up the chain. So, for example, BlackRock, I think they are one of the three biggest companies in the world. And BlackRock has these different companies that buy for them. Invitation Homes was a big name. So when I used to, list homes in certain areas, uh, and we'll talk about what criteria that they actually have. But in certain areas, they would want to take a market share. So I remember getting all cash, no contingencies, escalated offers, past list price when this was actually happening quite a bit. And it wasn't every home, but it was enough to let people know that, hey, if these guys are offering, then these guys are probably going to get it. So they are, again, targeting more single family homes or just single family homes. Um, I think one of the issues with that is, so just to dive into the data, what is the percentage of ownership? Like how many homes does institutional investors actually own? It's only up to 2% of the actual single family home inventory in the US. So it is technically a very small percentage. However, depending on where the market is, so I'll give you some real examples. The market share or how much of that market people are taking or the companies are taking can be quite high. So again, only up to 2% of the total single family housing inventory. But in places like the Sun Belt, the Southeast, excuse me, the housing stock or the inventory can be higher. So Atlanta, Georgia, it's actually up to 25% of the single family rental market. So that's quite a bit. That's a lot. 25% of any market share in the entire city of Atlanta. Jackson, Florida is up to 21%. Charlotte, North Carolina, so all East Coast, right? 18%. Tampa, Florida, 15%. So I think it just depends on what area you live in that you may or may not see some of these activity. But Peter, what do you think is the long term? Uh, is this bill actually a good bill? Do you agree with it? Do you think that it actually hurts the market?
Yeah, I can understand the reasoning behind it because we do have a affordability problem. Home prices are way too high. The average person, I mean, I have a doctor friend. Okay, he makes good money. He's a surgeon, by the way, in one of the largest hospitals in Washington. Okay, sorry, it is the largest hospital in Washington, and he's not buying like a super nice home. Okay, he's not like living it up rich. He because we have so much demand and such little inventory in Washington. Um, I mean, if someone like him is struggling, I think the average person, I mean, even if you worked at tech, it's not like you're buying like a really, really nice home. It's still hard to buy a home unless you're like middle management or managerial position, which how many of those are there, right? And if you're not in tech, like, man, good luck. You're not buying a home. And that's really sad. I'm talking about the cops, right? The firefighters, right? The medical people, who are who add some real value to our society. They cannot buy a home. And so there's a problem. I could totally understand that. I think so the effort I'm here for. I don't know if this is actually going to help. And that's I think this is the biggest problem is that even though I can understand the idea behind it, there's so many loopholes to this problem. And I also don't think that institutional investors are necessarily the problem. So let's just kind of break this down. Institutional investors cannot buy, they basically cannot own. So this bill is not forcing current institutional entities from selling their homes, just FYI. There's also a thing where it's like they can't just acquire and own more than 350 homes in one company. That's the ban or whatever you call it, right? That's a lot of homes. Um, the the other and okay, so but the other problem is that it it's also a problem that there's so many loopholes around it, right? They can totally make other entities. Now they did say that it cannot source into a single entity, right? Because there's always like a trail. And if they find out, I don't know what what happens. I don't know if they get a big fine, but essentially, there's loopholes around it, right? Like there's ways around. Investors are always going to find ways to get around the 350 home limit, but they could also buy homes to rent them out. I mean, obviously, because then there'll be more rentals, thus the rental market will stay stable. So because you don't want to take out those rentals, because then the rental market is just going to go up. The demand's going to go up, and then of course homeowners are going to increase prices. That's just the way economy works. Um, and also, they can still buy to fix and flip the homes. So I think because there are so many loopholes, and investors are smart. We're always finding ways to try to like avoid paying more taxes, right? They're going to be smart. They're going to find ways around it. And I think that's where this is going to be this is not going to be that effective. The other problem is that this is just my opinion, but I don't know if a single investor should own more than like 10 single family homes personally. Um, the other problem is that even though it's only like 2 to 4% that ownership from institutional investors, there's a lot of people who own a ton of Airbnbs. And that does affect the market, right? Because you're buying single family homes for these Airbnbs. We all love Airbnbs. They're great, but they're definitely taking away from a lot of the people who want to buy a single family home in areas like Hawaii, right? Hawaii is a crazy Airbnb market because everyone goes there to visit. But the problem is that now home prices are so astronomically high out there that definitely the locals can't buy. But even for people like us who make good money, still can't buy because there's, the Airbnb people bought a lot of the homes. So just personally for me, I feel like even the small time investors, owning more than 10 homes. I just feel like is just, I mean, I understand, like, I'm so for capitalism. It's just, man, it like really sucks because if you own 50 to 100 homes as a normal investor, which, I mean, people like Brandon, right, from Bigger Pockets, own, it just destroys the house, the inventory for, people who want to just be a homeowner and buy at a reasonable price. So that's just my thought. Uh, what do you think about that?
So do you think we should have a cap on wealth as well?
Oh, here we go.
Should we redistribute wealth? Because that's what I hear you saying.
Yeah, I'm all for socialism, and
I,
actually am a communist behind
I,
this hat.
I'm not surprised. I mean, all jokes aside, I think it's very slippery. Um, if you This is a slippery situation if you don't really consider the long-term effects. Whenever I see something on the news, especially like this coming from the administration, I also think that on some level that this is kind of a distraction, right? It's like the thing that's characterized Trump, in my opinion, and many people's opinions, is that there's such a mix from what seems to be terrible decisions to really great decisions. And I think, like, for example, something that I really, really, really loved that the administration did, that I don't really even think most people really realize, is they change a lot of things in the FTA. This is kind of a sidetrack, but a sidebar. But they revamped the FDA. They hired the right people to try and promote good things in terms of like diets. Right? They're actually recommending people eat less bread and carbs and exercise more and eat fruits and vegetables. It's like these things are unprecedented. They're allowing more psychedelics, right, for research purposes to reduce PTSD. So there's all these things, and of course, the Doge thing. How can we forget Doge? Government waste, fraud, and abuse, trying to reduce that and modernize this. So, and then there's the Iran war, right? So there's so many there's like this spectrum of decisions that the administration is making. I feel like this is, personally, I could be wrong, but personally this is one of those things that kind of give the president and the administration goodwill and help them to seem kind of, and it is, on the optics of it, on the surface, I think it looks good to many people because housing is a problem, as we know, right? Getting into it is hard. Even if you just make a median income, it's just so hard. I mean, I was just watching a budgeting video on people trying to afford their first home, and it's like the conversations that people need to have is like, what are you gonna give up? Are we gonna give up childcare to afford a home? It's like with these dual income families, and inflation hitting people hard, and gas prices the way it is, and grocery bills the way it is, it's not easy. So I think there should be some controls, for sure. And I think the single family housing market is something that is kind of like a store of value. It's what keeps the economy afloat because that's where a lot of the equity is. I think we have the biggest single family, the percentage of single family homes to all homes in America, or I think the highest in any country around the world. So a lot of our equity is in these homes. A lot of Americans don't have savings. They just have some, a lot of them have just some equity, but they don't have cash on hand to do anything else with. So I think this is an important topic, and who knows? Maybe it will continue to put pressure on these big players to control them so that they can't just, willy-nilly. I mean, 25% of ownership in Atlanta, Georgia, when I read that, I felt like that was a huge number, and that could have an effect, if they decide to unload homes or start buying more. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that, basically the administration is putting all of these, things that sound really good, but, in practicality, it's probably, it's not super, it may not be effective at the end of the day. But they're doing a lot of things that, could theoretically be good, right? Like good efforts. So, um yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think we have I think homeownership is something that's such a sacred thing in America, right? That's the American dream. This is why people move over to from other countries to come to America. And once you own the home, do I believe you can rent, like do a cap on rent and do all those? No, I don't. Because I think once you own the home, you own the home. Okay? It's your home. Um and that's one of the issues right now, like that we have to fight. I think though, maybe as a part of the solution is that, because I don't want institutions to own a bunch of homes. I That's just my stance. Does that impede on capitalism? Maybe. Or maybe there could be a way we could just, decentivize them from buying, like make it more expensive, right? At the end of the day, it's got to pencil out. So maybe we can, you know, create ways to generate revenue, right? Like, okay, if you're gonna, like, kind of like what we did with foreign buyers, because that's another problem, right? A lot of people from, areas like China, where they come in, they buy a lot of these homes cash because they have a bunch of money and they're literally investing into American markets. And what we did was we started creating taxes around that, right? I'm not necessarily opposed to that, to be honest. Like, what if we made a tax to purchase a home? And if it's a, yeah, like to purchase a home, right? And we can generate some extra revenue, because that could help. That could help kind of create, maybe a more affordable situation for the average homeowners, because then there would be maybe less demand and the more supply for the average homeowners. I don't really know the answer, but yeah, I totally hear you. And it's like, again, we love capitalism, but how far can this go? How far is there going to be a gap between the rich and the poor? What if we print a bunch of money and now the gap is just so large that there is just no way for someone to even make it, no matter how hard you work, which is kind of like what Korea is right now, where there are people who are very hardworking. They want to follow all the rules, very hardworking. They're even entrepreneurs and they start businesses, but it's so hard to make it. Like owning a home is just not even in their, they're not even, it's not even in their sights. What their goal is to have this thing called chunse, which is to have basically a big deposit so you can live in a condo or an apartment for low rent. That's their dream. It's not home ownership, because that's just impossible. So I would love to keep this American dream alive of home ownership, and I think we should do something about it. So that's my final thought.
Yeah, when you say Korea, I also think about Europe, um, and many other places in the around the world where you know ownership of anything is just difficult. Um, I mean, I just came from Vietnam, right? I mean, my wife was kind of teasing me because I'm negotiating hard when I go to these markets or whatever, and trying to figure out how much tip I should give them. And literally, meals are like $1, and I'm trying to negotiate for 50 cents for the sock. And my mom is like, "Why can't we just give them $2 extra?" And
Right.
it's like we forget how crazily difficult it is to just have ownership of anything. I mean, these people are just living off of their income. When I go to these countries, like I remember I went to Thailand and then to Vietnam. I look at average incomes, and I remember in Thailand reading like the average income was $11,000 a year. Just
I
think
don't know
about that.
how. Yeah,
$11,000 a year, right?
it's
So
less
it's
than
like,
$1,000. Yeah, a month.
it's so I think, you hit on a couple of good points. And I think this is part of the reason why America is so divided. It's the haves and the have nots. It's capitalism versus socialism. It's, like the rules and the laws of the US that allow, foreign ownership. It's like, I heard that the Chinese own a lot of land around a lot of strategic places in America, right? Right next to power centers or data centers or governments, and like, so it's I understand why there's a lot of people kind of rising up in these political movements, and why the mayor got elected in Seattle, because of this kind of energy of like, hey, we're tired of these big guys bullying us around. We need somebody to kind of, stand up for us. And then that goes too far. Think about Mamdani in New York, or, Katie in, Seattle. So I think it's a very divisive time for America, unfortunately. And I hope that, according to you, the rapture will be here pretty soon. So, maybe none of this will matter. Maybe
I'm gonna laugh
UFOs,
now.
or, maybe we'll be beamed up by UFOs, or, they're
Well,
not
that's what they
UFOs.
say it's gonna be.
It's an interesting time, man. It's a very if you really think about it, it's like, what is the limit of, like, what can success really look like, you know, in America? I think that's where people are kind of like, okay, we want to be successful too. We want to have ownership. We want to have equity. Uh, but should that stop somebody from achieving the highest levels? Should billionaires be illegal? I mean, these are things that people are talking about. So we'll see how it plays out. I don't have many other thoughts besides what we just talked about, and you know, we'll just continue to see the market. We will be out there making offers and taking offers. So if we see more institutional investors come out to play, we will know. We will tell everybody first.
Yep. Yep. Well, sounds good. Thank you everyone for watching. Please like and subscribe to our channel at Audigo. And yeah, we are local realtors out here, and we have a lot of insight around the housing market. So yeah, thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next video.